last year. Like, what? No. God always eclipses himself. He always goes to new levels, man. The things that he has for your life, I'm here to tell you, they're absolutely supernaturally awesome, exceedingly abundantly above all that you can even ask, think, or imagine. This is what he has for your life. It's actually really, really good. The best days are ahead of you. Stop looking back. You got to burn the ships, get rid of the escape routes that you've created that are allowing you to abandon the call of God on your life. Forward is your only option. Listen to me. I wrote this down. I want to share it with you. I look at this very often in my office. I have it written right there on my desk in my office and in my notes. It says this, my expectancy for the future will always exceed my loyalty to the past. My expectancy for the future will always exceed my loyalty to the past. You got to decide that I'm going to put more stock and hope in the future that God has for me rather than what the past may have dealt me. And I'm putting hope and putting all my cards in on the future because I know it's going to be great. I know it's going to be bright. I know it's going to be awesome because it's God-led. It's going to be so, so good. Isaiah chapter 43. I think starting in verse 16 in the Message translation. Listen to what it says. This is what God says. The God who builds a road right through the ocean, who carves a path through pounding waves, the God who summons horses and chariots and armies. They lie down and can't get up. They're snuffed out like so many candles. This is what God says. Forget about what's behind. Forget about what's happened. Don't keep going over old history. Be alert. Be present. I'm about to do something brand new. It's bursting out. Don't you see it? There it is. I'm making a road through the desert, rivers, and the badlands. This is what the God of the universe says. And when I read this Sub30, I thought it was so prophetic for every single one of us in here. Like if you've been coming to Sub30, you know me long enough. I'm not some ooky, spooky preacher or whatever. But man, I really do believe that's prophetic for every single one of us, man. Don't forget about what's happened. Forget about what's happened. God's doing a new thing. And what did it say right there? He carves roads in the middle of your wilderness. You think you're stuck in the middle of a desert in life right now, and I'm in my 20s and 30s, and life just ain't working out like I thought it was, and I'm not making as much money as I thought I needed to, and I feel like I'm in a desert. I feel like I'm out here in the middle of nowhere. You know what our God does? He carves a road in the middle of your nowhere. Right now you feel like, man, I feel like I'm in this dry and weary place. You know what our God does? He takes rivers and puts them in the badlands of your life. It's significant. This is how good God is, right in the middle of you thinking like all hope is lost. And man, God has forgotten about me. No, he hadn't forgotten about you. He's going to carve a road right in the middle of where you're at. What are you going to do on that road? You're going to get back on it and you're going to hop towards your calling and destiny. Keep walking. Don't look back. Keep walking. The best days are ahead of you. Stop letting the failure of the past make you fearful of the future. Don't let the failure of the past make you fearful of the future. I thought about Abraham. When God was calling Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, we don't have time to read it. God's calling Abraham. He chooses, he selects Abraham to be the father of many nations. But it alludes to it in Hebrews chapter 11. In verse 8, it says this, by faith Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance. Everyone say inheritance. That was so flippin' weak. Say inheritance. Thank you. Inheritance. He would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed, and he went, even though he didn't know where he was going. You see, understand this. Abraham could have stayed right where he was. Like it wasn't like God said, hey, you're going to move or I'm going to kill you. It wasn't nothing like that. I mean, he could have stayed comfortable right where he was. The only problem with that is that the inheritance was forward. Cortez and his men, after a couple months on a ship, hey guys, we can stay right here on the ship. It's pretty comfortable. It's pretty nice. We're pretty used to where we're at right here in this life now on this ship. We can stay here. The only problem with that is that the treasure's forward. And you can stay where you're at right now, man, and you're comfortable and it's easy and it's not difficult and you got a good routine going on. The only problem is that the purpose and the destiny and the calling is forward. It's forward. It's going to require us. See, I love what Christine Kane says sometime, and it's so true. This journey with Jesus and calling and purpose, I love what she says. I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. I am telling you it's going to be worth it. I will never be that preacher that looks at you and preaches to you and says something like, man, come on, just come to Jesus. It's going to be awesome all the time, every day. It's like you wake up and your favorite song's on the radio, and you're like, oh, my God. You walk downstairs, it's like, oh my God, blueberry pancakes, this is so great. I'm never going to be that pretty. It's not all roses. It's certainly not easy. If you've ever heard, hey man, serve God, it's easy, you were lied to. It's never easy. At times, I guess sometimes it gets easier, but I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying it's worth it. It's 100% worth it. Your calling is worth it. Your purpose is worth it. Burn the ships. Don't look back. Keep doing what God's called you to do. The inheritance was in a place he did not know. He wasn't even familiar with that place. Kind of like your calling in it's out there. You don't know where. You might not be familiar with it, but it's out there. I wrote this down. Why are people afraid to move forward and burn ships? You know why they're afraid? Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, and fear of missing out. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, and fear of missing out. So fear of the unknown is you're afraid of what you don't know. Fear of failure is you're afraid of what you do know. And you're afraid that you're not going to be able to measure up. And fear of missing out is you're afraid of letting go. You say to yourself, well, man, I really want to jump over here to the purposes of God, but man, what if I let go of this to jump to that? But while I let go, something really, really good happens right here, and so I'll just kind of stay here. And they're afraid of letting go. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of missing out. You got to stop letting fear control your life and make your decisions. Like seriously, how many more times are you going to let fear make the decision for you? You really want to take this new job because you feel like God's called you to it, but the money just doesn't seem right, and so fear creeps in, and it keeps you from doing what you feel like God's called you to do. You going to let fear keep making your decisions? You feel like this particular relationship is, for whatever reason, really working out. Maybe it's a friendship, or maybe it's a guy-girl relationship, and you're like, man, I kind of want to jump in this, but I had some bad experiences, and so you don't because fear has now made the decision for you. When really, man, there was nothing wrong with it. You could have easily just had a great relationship with that person or friendship or whatever, but man, fear made your decision. You gonna keep letting that happen, man? Don't let that happen. That's awful. What's holding you back? You got to burn it. If you know that there are awful relationships, awful ones, old habits, addictions, negative thinking that's holding you back from the purposes of God, tonight they got to get burned. You got to set them on fire and burn. Don't let fear. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, for God's not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. Fear is not your friend when it comes to the call of God on your life. Forward is your friend, not fear. Understand this. The band can go ahead and make their way out if they want to. Understand this. In the midst of all this, I got to say this. Burning ships does not always mean burning bridges. Burning ships doesn't always mean burning bridges. Now, sometimes it does, but not always. Case in point, when I was in Bible college, there were some guys there that were with me in Bible college, and you get to know people, you're living with them, you're doing Bible college together. And I remember some of them, their story was this, man, when I felt God tell me that man, I was to go into like vocational full-time ministry and go to Bible college, I went and I told my parents, and the first thing my parents said is, well, whoa, I don't know, you might want to have a backup plan. You might still want to, go to 4 years of school, and you never know. Ministry can be weird, and it's like their parents weren't really supportive, trying to talk them out of it and stuff like that. So in regards to that particular example, man, if you feel like God has placed that in you, then here's what you need to do. Get everything out and burned that would try to persuade you to do whatever it is other than following God's voice. But here's the deal. Just because you burn the ships that try to persuade you doesn't mean you got to burn the bridge with your parents. You still love them, still honor them, still pray for them, but you just know, man, this is what God's calling me to do. So I'm going to burn the ships that would try to take me away, but I don't have to burn the bridge with this relationship. Burning ships is not always burning bridges. I know what parents are trying to do. They're trying to make sure, people are, you got to be logical, got to be reasonable. But look, sometimes faith isn't logical and reasonable. In fact, faith is rarely ever logical and reasonable. Hey, I'll even say this. If you have on your path to what God's called you to do, if you have a fallback plan, that's not faith. That ain't faith. You think Jesus had a fallback plan? Man, if this cross junk don't work out, I'm gonna have to expand my carpentry business, I guess. Maybe I kind of have an eye for masonry. Maybe I can do that. And, they call me the good shepherd. Maybe I'll just tend some sheep or something. There's no fallback. It was the cross. Either he conquered death and sin or he's dead. But he conquered it. He conquered. Man, I thought Abraham, Moses, Noah, Nehemiah, David, all the disciples, none of those guys had a fallback plan. It's either we do what we feel the Lord's calling us to do, or we're going to die in the process. I wish I could take all those awesome Bible guy characters, I wish I could stick them all on the stage right here, and I could just ask them the question, hey guys, was it worth it? Was it worth everything that you went through and having to pick your family up and move across nations and do what God's called you to do? Some years you were in much, and some years you lived in lack. Was it worth it? I have a feeling their answer would be this. It was the most wild ride I've ever done in my entire life serving Jesus. But yeah, it was worth it, and I'm glad I didn't bail out. It was a crazy wild ride. And sometimes I didn't know what to think, and it was wild and unexpected, and every day seemed like a brand new adventure, and it'll mess with your nerves sometime, but I'm glad I didn't bail out. I'm glad I didn't back down. I'm glad I said yes. I'm glad I stayed the course. Burn the ships. Greater is always in front of you. It's never behind you. So now let's take some notes. Let's get practical before we close. How to burn the ships. I just want to give you quick things. How to burn the ships. Practical stuff right here. How to burn the ships. Number one, make the choice, right? How do I burn these ships in my life that are holding me back? You got to make the choice. You got to be decisive about whatever it is that you need to burn. You got to draw a line in the sand and make a clear decision. Say it out loud if you have to. Girls, write it on your stinking bathroom mirror if you have to. Like all that other junk on those mirrors. I don't know. Write it down, make it plain. Cortez, as the captain of the fleet, had to make a decision that forward is the only way we are going. And you, as the captain of your life, you like what I did there, captain? You, as the captain of your life, so cheesy. You got to make the decision.